Well, I wasn't originally going to film all this, especially now that I'm bleeding, you know. But ShopDog and I have been out here for a few hours. Let me grab my blood here. Just kind of putting things in. So, some of the things that have happened, obviously the Z-bar's in now, and I'll get some grease on that boot so it doesn't tear. Obviously the steering column must be in because you can see it hooked up, and lo and behold it is. I did go ahead and add a little bit more Dynamat than he had done yesterday behind the fuse box, which of course you can see is now mounted. Let me get some white. I've got a lot of training to do on the wires yet. I did have to pull the clutch anticipate switch because you used to have to be all the way on the floor to barely hit it, but now, you know, right in here is where we're at, so that's a good start. But you can see, and of course I knew this is how this would go because I've done a few of these cars. The easiest way to take the strain off of that harness is to bring it forward and then bring it back. One, they cut them a little long, but two, I don't want any stress on the ignition switch. One, you know, high current wires, but two, you know, you need to have a service loop if you've got to drop the column. So I really love when all the factory hangers, well, one is busted right there, so I'll have to add something. But anytime all the factory hangers are there, that's awesome. It really, really helps. So you can see, just starting to train wires on where they need to be. You know, here is the light and everything for the heater control. You can see I've already got the heater resistor already plugged in. I've got to go ahead and add the horn relay and find a nice home for that, because that's one thing with these kits, and you no longer have a relay out on the core support. So we're just training wires, getting things where they want to go. I thought about it for a while, and I am going to add the main feed from the roll control, you know, from the solenoid itself. I'm going to go ahead and add it on this connector here. So these two connectors are what's going to go down, you know, with the wire from the Dakota to the console, and that'll provide the lights. It'll give me the trigger wire for the switch, and I'll have to have another wire coming back up to the disarm switch, because one thing I like with nitrous or line locks or any optional thing that has a button that you can touch easily, and his is on his shifter knob, is let's have an override switch. So I started kind of thinking about that, and we ordered a bunch of switch ideas yesterday. So we took a bunch of notes and started figuring out what we needed. And what I think we're going to do, and I even printed up a little sample to kind of get an idea of what I think, is I really like these switches. You know, I like how nice and positive they feel. However, to get everything I want, I don't know that the round switch makes sense. So we're going to go with a larger 30 by 22 or 30 by 20.2, or it's 22 point. Anyway, these nice little more rectangular rocker switches. What I'm thinking, and honestly the faceplate will probably actually be cut out of on the laser out of engraving plastic, but you know, this at least showed me, because you know it's an hour on the printer, but I can probably 3D print some kind of a pod that extrudes out, uses these screw holes, so I'd have to go a little wider, and then you know I can have a light showing when I'm armed, you know, which is why I want to wire it in the order I'm doing it. The gauge cluster gets this switch. Well, let's make it nice. His exhaust cutouts, he's always complained that he never remembers which way they go. Well, let's label them. So I think something like that, obviously not in green, it's just what we had loaded, sitting right there. Shouldn't be a knee knocker, and should really, really be nice, easy to use, nice and visible. So hopefully by the end of this project, I'll have a way of making that. You know, got to think it through. But I think between the laser and the 3D printer, we should be able to come up with something that works there. So we're just training wires, doing some more looming. So I'll get back to it. All right, ShopDog thinks it's time to go in. It's like 9:30 or 10, something like that. But yeah, we're just getting ready to start running back for the rear body harness. You know, you get all these new light bulbs and all the little bits and bobs. So what we've got, in fact, you can see here, she's laying all over. I'm just starting to pull her out. I have run the line back for the fuel pump relay, and I know it's going to look like it's really, really long, and yet by the time I get it where I want it, it's going to be just long enough. So it's nice to have that fuel pump relay in a safe spot. You know, I don't want it under the hood, and I do want it somewhere that, you know, a little more discreet. So we've started that. It's the only thing running back so far. We are just slowly working the gutter, you know, and I actually had to do a repair here, which might explain why that red wire was damaged. There was a plate that's welded in there that was bent up. So we've repaired that, which took a lot longer than I expected. So you can see right, well, maybe you can see. Let me get some light. So see, that's where the fuel pump stuff's going to run up. And this will actually be a piece of convoluted here when the other harness is in. Then runs up nice and safe. And then she'll be fed off the fuel and triggered from the MSD out in the engine bay. So that'll be kind of nice. But you can see we're starting to convince wires to be where they need to be. It's a messy job. If I get a chance tomorrow, I may want to start laying out the carpet, because that usually takes a few days to relax. So laying that out is probably not a bad idea, because believe it or not, changing the carpet or getting the carpet down is part of wiring the car. So we will attack that as well. So at this point, ShopDog says, let's go take a nap. But before we can go in, ShopDog and Bean, they gotta hit the head real quick before we can go in. But yeah, no, it's snowing again, so oh well. Guess we get snow. Alright, ShopDog and I went in, had some supper. I'm coming back out to do a wrap-up video, because I have some other commitments tonight. But I did spend a couple hours out here, and we got a little bit done. So started the rear body harness, you know, haven't done any light sockets or anything, and then ran into an issue that I wasn't expecting, that I should have expected. I've worked on convertibles, but because of how much more wire I'm running, the factory routing of the rear body harness becomes iffy. This arm right here on the convertible, so you can see it's that big one right there. As this comes down, depending on where your wire harness is and how well it's capped, it can become an issue. The factory harness just ran right here, wasn't a big deal, had like 3 wires in it, no biggie. Well, you can see how much bigger our harness is now. So I took the hole saw, just popped a couple of larger holes through the plate, and then ran that into the trunk. One for the stereo stuff and one for the actual rear harness. So now they're coming up. They're going to get little pinch pins right here and then come around. So you can see we've got this, by the time it's done, is going to wind up either here, although that's less ideal because it's kind of in your way for any packaging, or perhaps here, you know, somewhere where it's real easy to get at. You can see now this all just comes as wire. I've got to actually do the work to do the side lights, the reverse lights, and you know, the brake lights and the turn signals. But it's not that hard, you know. It's just taking your time, building it up. I mean, they give you pre-populated harnesses, so I mean, it's not that hard. It's just learning how to splice wires correctly. Got the old harness out. Let's see what else we got going on here. This orange and white wire here is part of the rear body harness. This will actually go to the door switch, as well as this. Now, this isn't what we're going to use. I'm just remembering what hole it is. We'll use the plastic ones because I like them better. But this courtesy light. The other courtesy light will come from that harness over there, which is of course harnessed to these. Now, this wire would have gone down this channel if this was a standard car and we had sail panel lights or a dome light, but because it's convertible, we didn't have to run it. At this point, we have quite a bit run. It looks strange because I know it doesn't look any different, but all of this has been rerun like twice. Just making sure that I liked where things were run and that they'd be safe, serviceable, and work out pretty nicely. Now, obviously, we've got plenty of wire, but we'll use quite a bit of that up building that rear body harness and building up the sockets. Once that's done, the other harness that I've got to build is the harness to the actual Dakota. Now, if you recall, these connectors right here will go to a connector on the other end and some wiring to the Dakota itself, which I'm probably going to place behind the heater controls in this car because I've got a few other things that I want to place, and one of them, I normally place the Dakota up here. It's a convenient location. I have something else I'd rather place there because it's a little harder to get at and something not a thief might not think about looking in. So an area that I think I'd rather use for some other uses. Let's see. So that's kind of where we're at right now. You know, just kind of shooting videos every now and then when I remember to do it to show just how much is actually involved in wiring the cars. If you had to do this for a living, it'd be terrible. I don't know that you could, I don't know that people could pay enough to make this worthwhile to do. To do it nicely it's a lot of time. So that's kind of where we're at there. Yeah, I know. I'm about halfway through wiring that car. And then, of course, you know, we found out how much more the car had to come apart. So that got on hold forever. But I do have some switches on order from DigiKey. And waiting for those. Really curious how this will work. Once I see the switches and decide how I want to do it, I think we will probably make a small breakaway harness. And then I will get to play with Tinkercad a little bit and see how good my skills are there. I'm pretty good with my Glowforge as far as laser stuff, but the 3D printer stuff for us has been pretty basic. So, you know, I just printed a quick placeholder. I mean, it took a couple minutes to design and, you know, less than an hour to print, just so that I could kind of see in my mind what we were talking about size-wise. And yeah, it's pretty reasonable. I think that's going to work out pretty nice. All right, well, this isn't a how-to video. I want to show one of the things that you're probably going to want to know if you're going to be doing this. As you're following their instructions, they're usually pretty clear. Sometimes you're going to see two wires going together. Now, the temptation to do this wrong is really high. The best thing to do, one, have the correct crimper. So in this case, this is the crimper that we're looking for. But one of the things, if you just try to shove that in there and go for it, you always break that little tab. So, go ahead. Hopefully this is in frame. Kind of pre-convince it. So just take the end. See how we've kind of pre-shaped it? Keep them to each side. Use the correct part. Gently crush. You'll note each wire is cradled nicely. And same with the insulation. We'll go ahead, pre-start it. Crimp it down. Now we've got a nice, good, sturdy crimp. So then, you know, if you want to follow the way, and on something like this, there's no reason not to continue the way they've already mapped it. Then you're going to take, notice its position. So see, that would be E. Notice that brown was on the bottom. One thing to note, you'll see where the lock goes. There's a lock tab. Pop it in there. Look again here. There's a lock tab. you'll pop it in there. Now, if you have to remove it, you just take your little remover and go in there, you push down on the lock tab, pin comes back out. And if you gently pop the thing back up, you've corrected whatever, you moved it around to where it was actually supposed to be. Look at that, locks back up. Now, those always crimp really nice. The ones that are kind of a pain are these male spades. These ends don't crimp as well, especially not with the autoloader. You got to be a little careful with that. So I will usually take and start them with a different crimper just to kind of get them, and I use the round one to just kind of get it into shape and then final do it, because these are just, because it had to be so stiff, you can see how thick that is, and these are just really hard on the little crimper. So here's a great example of the different gauge. Hopefully we focus on that. This is almost twice as thick. So these little inexpensive crimpers are going to have a hard time. So if you pre-form them a little bit and give the crimper the best chance, then it'll work. Because if you, this ear and this ear, if you curl them up, chances of getting them straight and working again, pretty slim. Well, since I showed you how to do the double, figured I better show you how to do the single as well. So let me grab one of the sockets. So this, I actually have a nice ratcheting. So you'll lift it. Oh, let me get in frame. You'll lift your tab. You'll look at your wire size and you'll figure out which one you need. Almost always for this stuff, B is going to be it. See how this little gate kind of just holds it in place for you? You can even go ahead and just start, get to that first tooth on the ratchet. Now, that's held. In fact, you can see the little lock tab right there. Then, go ahead and groom this wire up real nice. Slide her all the way up to the gate. Get her in there. And just crimp her until she releases. Lift the tab. Look at that. Perfect crimp. Works almost every time. This works really well with these thin wall pieces. And you're going to find, you know, ones like this, it'll work on C if you pre-bend her over. In one of the shots later, I will show a couple different varieties of connectors that work in here. But, yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Now, there's different crimpers for different things. You know, this is for a different style pin. This isn't as good for these Delphi pins. If I come over here, well, you saw there's the ones for the weather pack. But depending on what you're working on, and having the right crimper definitely does help. These are great for doing your basic insulated and non-insulated standard crimp terminals. So you can see, you know, the insulated on the bottom, the non-insulated on the top. These do a fantastic job of crimping when you're using those style, you know, any of the things with this stuff on them. So those are absolutely fantastic. Now the ones I use for my relays, I can use that with my regular crimper. So, and then, you know, almost all of these will work perfectly fine with the two crimpers I've got down here. And they're actually Delphi crimpers, but I bought them through American Auto Wire because honestly they were the cheapest there. So yeah, that's just part of what you got to do. Well, it's time to go in and make some supper. So let me show you where we're at. So you remember we ran all that wiring up. So, and of course this is going to be that mercury switch, so don't worry about that yet. And these will actually wind up in some convolute because I don't like this edge right here, but on this car it does run under there. So we've got a side marker light, we've got this light harness going together, and all this will actually get wrapped one second time, but I like to keep it so that I could actually completely remove this light harness without messing with any other harness. And you can see this is the fuel pump relay right here. So with any luck, that's going to wind up right over in here. So we'll see what we get. I've still got to do that parking light and then integrate these harnesses. But yeah, that's, doesn't seem like it, but that's 2 hours of work already. So, and then I've had a few spots where, you know, you crimp them as best you can, but sometimes adding a little solder doesn't hurt, just to make sure. So probably another hour and a half, and the rear body harness should be run. The only thing I'm not going to have run is the power feed down to the fuel pump. One, I don't have a fuel pump yet, and two, I don't, until I drop the tank, I don't like monkeying with this. There's a grommet here that I have a new one for, and we'll turn it into a double wide, and we'll go from there. So that's actually a separate project. And then for this, I got to get this off of here, figure out where we're mounting it for real. I love this. I think they literally zip tied it in the hopes that that would actually work. So we'll come up with something a little nicer, something that might work. So conveniently, at least when it fell down in there, and of course he's got that, you know, this little panel thing, so you'd never notice that it wasn't hooked up. So it was hiding behind it, but at least it was hidden down, so, you know, it wasn't going off on the alarm all the time. It just wasn't doing anything. So we've got a new wire run for that. And yeah, we're definitely getting there. So yeah, we'll make sure nothing can rub or get caught in the cocktail shaker, and nothing can catch on here. We'll have nice little clippy points. I don't know if you can see it, but I've actually already used one of my mounts right there by doing a harness tie. So that seems like probably enough for right now. I think I'm gonna go feed my wife. All right, Shop Dog's doing his thing, just supervising. I've been back here tonight doing most of the rest of the rear body harness at this point. Always fun. These light sockets are never fun, but you can see they're all in there. And we'll get that curled under real nice later. We'll get some little brackets or something. And then instead of having a single point ground like the original harness, each one of these light bulbs now gets its own ground, which solves about half your brightness problems, believe it or not. So, no, still gotta wire in that switch. I'll deal with that later. It's not high on my list. You can see we've got everything run over here. I just wasn't happy running that under there, so we just ran convolute the rest of the way to protect it. We will probably zippy it to this hole just to keep it out of the way. But yeah, I think it's time to start pulling tools and crap out of here now. Poor guy's completely tuckered out. So I think that's about where we're going to get tonight. I may do the courtesy light for the driver's door. I may not. I'm getting tired. So we now have a rear body harness run, plus the audio stuff. And I know people complain about running the power cable with it. I can't imagine it's going to be a giant problem for this car. And if it is, we'll take it apart and move the cable. But you can see we got her zipped. Everything looks nice and tidy. It's all safe and out of the way. I didn't bother hooking up this because until I drop the tank, I'm not even going to monkey with that. Plus, I've still got to add the feed wire down for the fuel pump, which of course is going to not be a big hurry. Holly doesn't seem to be shipping those lately, so we'll see. It's been on order for a couple months. We'll see how much longer before we decide to do a different approach. So now I don't have to worry about any of those wires getting pinched by the top, which makes me happy. I don't have to worry about a fire right here, which was really a problem before. And the car should be a little quieter. We've got a lot more Dynamat in here than they originally did. We're kind of detuning as much as you can. It makes a difference. I know it makes the car a little bit heavier, but we're also making the car a little bit more powerful. So, you know, every little bit helps. So this may actually be the wrap up of this video. I've been recording it over the course of the week, and like I said, that may actually be the end of this video. So if it is, ShopDog and I thank you for watching. Hopefully this is entertaining to somebody. If nothing else, at least I know Bartley enjoys watching what we're doing. As far as this project, once we get the courtesy light stuff done, we can go ahead and put the kick panels back in. Once the kick panels are back in, then I can seriously start looking at placing the Dakota box, only it's not going to be where I normally put it because I got other things to go there, as well as getting the alarm stuff placed, the GPS placed, a couple other aftermarket things that need to go in the car. But yeah, this is coming along pretty good. Should be nice and safe. It'll be a lot easier to deal with later than what he had. Stereo should sound basically exactly the same. Shouldn't be any big difference. We are changing to the retro sound instead of that custom auto sound. I personally don't like the custom auto sounds. I hate that stupid green face. Plus, I have found in the past that the knobs are not always responsive. I do like the retro sounds. The big thing for him is going to be having the Bluetooth. It's going to make it nicer for the phone, so he can listen to his music. Trying to think. I think I've already videoed all of where we're at here, so you can see, you know, it looks like spaghetti, but it really isn't. Everything's thought out. I know what everything is and basically where I want it when the dash goes in, because remember, the dash pods come back into these spaces, so we've got to keep those open. Can't go putting stuff there. You got to really think about how this goes together when it's all done. And anything you can do to make it easier to work on later, that's never a bad thing. So, all right. Yeah, I think I'll edit this week's stuff together and post a Bent69 video. So, once again, thanks for watching.